Hello and welcome to AP Dynamics Leadership Academy. My name is Audrey and I'll be your fairy mentor for all things leadership, team building, and performance improvement. If you're ready to transform from know-it-all to learn-it-all, then grab a snack, grab a seat, and check your ego at the door. Welcome to your next chapter. Hello. Welcome to today's episode of AP Dynamics Leadership Academy. Broken trust breaks teams. How to build or repair trust in any relationship. Before we get too far, I was blown away by the amount of engagement on our last episode. Thank you so much to everyone who listened, downloaded, shared, left comments. That was the first episode and my first solo podcast. And it means so much to me to see so many of you engaging and resonating with having a bad boss and the things that we can learn from them. Your responses were so encouraging and overwhelming. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. Today, we're taking a look at how to address a lack of trust. This is applicable to entire orgs, but for it to work and really be adopted, it's something that has to become part of the culture. So it's a practice that has to be part of your core values across leadership and integrated into the team culture. When we encounter conflict or don't have trust in our peers, our leadership, or our organization, it impacts how we interact. The same is true when you're a leader and your team doesn't have trust in you. Suddenly, rooms are quieter when you walk in. You're contending with the meeting after the meeting. You know the one I'm talking about. Some people pregame it, but the essence is the same, where you have the actual meeting, everyone head nods and offers alignment on what's being discussed, and then after that meeting's over, the team messages or Slack messages start popping off, and everyone except the leader is pulled back together like, are they serious? How do they expect this to work? Do they realize how ridiculous that sounds? The same thing happens in our personal relationships too. You have a conversation with someone and they say something that leaves you feeling like you almost bit your tongue off to keep quiet. And then at the first opportunity, you call your mom, your sister, your zesty bestie, whoever's on your personal board of directors, and you give them the business on everything that was said, what you wanted to say and what you were thinking. Like you're sitting in the curtain booth on a reality show and it's time to make sure everyone else knows what you were actually thinking. It might offer temporary validation, but it should be ringing alarm bells on both sides for the person who these meetings or conversations are about, and then also for the people sitting in the curtain booth. And not just because someone's talking about you behind your back or you felt the need to talk about someone behind their back. This is alarming because this behavior signals something I've seen completely destroy high-performing teams in 6 months or less. This kind of behavior shows you don't have open communication on your team, which means you don't have a core pillar of a high-performing team, which is trust. Trust is everything. It's the key to everything you and your team will do for your entire career, and it's a proven indicator of how a business is going to perform. Want high engagement? You need trust. Want to have good coaching conversations? You need trust. Want to go after a wild stretch goal that's going to push your team? You need trust. Want your team to bring their expertise to the table and share their ideas? Oh my gosh, you guys are really catching on. You need trust. You need trust for all these things because they require being vulnerable. I'm going to try to stick to team leader point of view for this one because otherwise we're going to end up in a mangled mess. Regardless of where you sit, though, the things we're talking about are applicable to every person in an org and will impact the business's outputs and successes. Okay, so you need trust for any of these things to work, right? For your team to offer you feedback, they have to feel safe being vulnerable and sharing their observations. They have to trust that they can disagree with you or push back on an idea or even share how something made them feel without fear of retaliation. If you want your team to chase a wild stretch goal and dig really deep into the reservoirs to pull it off, they have to feel safe failing. They have to trust you to have their backs and support them in order to feel motivated to even try it. And if you want your team to share their ideas and their expertise, to do the thing you hired them to do, they have to feel safe sharing an idea that might not land. They have to want to bring those things to the table. And if someone doesn't feel heard, or they feel like they're getting shut down or criticized or like you're going to fly off the handle or make fun of them, they're not going to show up the way you want them to. Trust is the foundation that can make or break you, your team, entire departments, and ultimately impact entire organizations. So how do you combat that? How do you help people feel safe enough that you can start building trust? By modeling it. If a lack of trust means people withdraw or stop engaging in ways that make them feel vulnerable, then you have to model that it's safe to be vulnerable. Now, if you're coming into a team that already has trust issues, or maybe you're trying to repair trust across your team or department, that's going to require a nuanced approach because you'll need to assess why the trust is broken and then plan what the best areas to show vulnerability are based on what you find. If you're coming into a team that's been dealing with a toxic culture of gossip, backstabbing, political warfare, then the core value of modeling vulnerability remains the same, but the areas you apply it in are going to differ. I'll give you an example. Say you have someone on your team who is a known gossip, and I don't mean lighthearted water cooler type chat. I mean full-blown, ill intent, desire to harm someone's professional or personal reputation gossip. That person has been allowed to basically run wild and has victimized almost everyone on the team with a page in their burn book. Trust across the team is broken because this behavior has been allowed to continue and it has impacted people mentally and caused strife across the team. Your team doesn't trust you. They don't trust the gossip. And depending on what was shared in that burn book, they may not even trust each other anymore. I'm saving you some discovery time by telling you the core cause of the team dysfunction, right? But if you didn't know the root cause, you might be tempted to show vulnerability to your team by sharing a personal story or a fear about meeting a goal or a recent failure. And these are all great ways to open communication and set the example that it's safe to be vulnerable, but they aren't the most effective way to handle this particular incident. In this situation, you have to be willing to take action. You can't stand by and allow the gossip's behavior to go on unchecked. Lack of action and knowingly overlooking things that harm your team break trust. So you can't tell a story and hope that fixes it. You have to take action. So what does that look like and how is that modeling vulnerability? First, we're going to assume some private coaching sessions have taken place in one-on-ones and that depending on the severity of the situation and if this is chronic behavior, that HR is involved somewhere in the background. Then you're going to talk to your team and acknowledge the situation as a group. Similar to the framework you use in standard coaching conversations, you're going to discuss the behavior, the impact, and then instead of asking about intent, you're going to set your expectations of go-forward behavior across the team. You don't need to single anyone out. This is a group meeting, and shaming someone in a group is not effective, and that at this point, it's shaming. You're not correcting behavior. You'll just make your team feel unsafe to make a mistake in the future. Once you set your expectations for how the team should interact and what respectful engagement looks like, you can open the floor. Ask if anyone has actionable ideas they'd like to put on the table for consideration. They may or may not come forward, and that's okay. Let them know that if anyone wants to pull up in a one-on-one, you'll be available for X amount of time after the meeting, or they can discuss ideas and takeaways at their next one-on-one. Let them know the door is open when and if they're interested in sharing or continuing the conversation. Then you're going to keep an eye on things and make sure the expectations you set are being met. And you'll need to really listen to your team and ask questions to make sure this is happening. Sometimes it's not what people say, but what people aren't saying, So keep an eye out, and then if you aren't seeing changes or improvement, take next steps. And then as much as you're able, let your team know what that looks like. Revisit the behavior, impact, intent framework. To repair trust in this situation requires being vulnerable and offering open communication in a very specific way. Sharing personal anecdotes wasn't going to do it because the lack of trust wasn't caused by your team not knowing you. It was caused by your team not believing you had their back and that you didn't respect them enough to correct harmful behavior. I'll get off my soapbox now, but I want to set the expectation that if you're dealing with an established issue or trying to repair broken trust, you're going to have to get to the root cause of those symptoms to know where to focus your solutions. So creating a safe space to be vulnerable and encouraging open communication is essential. What are some ways you can do that? Be the person who sets the example. Create a safe space for open communication by acknowledging the elephant in the room. In any situation, your team is already thinking it. You acknowledging it validates them and lets them know it's okay to share their own concerns. So if the org sets a new goal you know is going to be really hard to hit, your team is also going to know that it's really hard to hit. The moment you put those quarterly numbers on screen, trust me when I say their hearts have already bottomed out into their stomachs, whether they say anything or not. Create some camaraderie and acknowledge the dang elephant. Don't go in with nothing but pom-poms and rah-rahs. Tell them, look guys, we just got new numbers to hit. I'm still working through strategy for how we can pull it off in such a reduced timeline, or whatever that sounds like for your position. Acknowledge that it's going to be hard. You don't have to cause a panic. Don't start openly fretting about how you'll never make it, the numbers are impossible, or anything like that. That's not helpful. You just need to acknowledge it. Then let your team know that you have a plan, or you're working on a plan and you're going to have it shared out by X date, or that you want to brainstorm with your team to come up with a plan together. The key is to acknowledge the elephant and then move on to solutions. Other ways you can encourage open communication is by asking for input during meetings or on projects. Instead of doing all the talking, make a point to ask a specific person for their input and then really listen to their ideas. Engage with what they share and then pull other team members into the discussion as appropriate. Most people have something to say. They're just scared to be wrong. So as you're engaging your team and asking for their input, keep that in mind. Let it shape your responses to them so that you're actively encouraging sharing rather than discouraging. And we've all been there, that fear of being wrong or messing up. We all experience that. So let your team know that they aren't alone in that. Share your experiences with them. Let them know you aren't perfect, because like it or not, there's an expectation, or maybe even I would call it like a sense of awe around leadership, that we don't make mistakes, or at least not the same kind our team would. So there's another way you can open the lines of communication and show that it's safe to be human. It's safe to be vulnerable. Own your mistakes. If you mess up, acknowledge it. Don't try to sweep it under the rug and hide it from your team. Let them see that you are a human too, and you'll naturally start building a stronger connection with them. Think about it. Who do you trust more in your life? People who take accountability and own their messes, or the person who pretends everything is fine and acts like anything that goes wrong is someone else's fault? If you can own your mistakes and take accountability, then your team is going to feel more confident in your leadership. But they're also going to feel more confident making their own mistakes and being open about it. And it's so much easier to fix a mistake someone felt comfortable being open about than it is to fix one someone's tried to hide because they didn't trust you enough to tell you. It's like spilling red juice on grandma's white carpet. That's terrifying. I'd be curious how many people shuddered when I said that, because I don't even have a grandma with white carpet and I got nervous. Lack of trust is like spilling that red juice, and instead of asking for help to clean it up or letting anyone know, you kind of just pull a rug over the spill and act like it never happened. 6 months later, when that rug gets moved for whatever reason, now grandma has a super set-in stain that probably isn't going to come out, where if you'd asked for help when it first happened, there's a pretty good chance the carpet could have been saved along with your relationship with grandma and whoever else's relationship who ended up getting blamed for the stain and the cover-up. Don't unknowingly encourage carpetgate at work. Set the precedent of owning mistakes, taking accountability, and then focusing on problem solving. This next one's kind of a no-brainer, but honestly, sometimes it's the most obvious things that we never even think about and need pointed out to us. So this next one is be honest. Mind-blowing, right? Who knew? Being honest builds trust. Real shocker. As obvious as this one is, though, it can wear a few disguises. Things like intentionally withholding information, manipulating data or situations, resharing information you know isn't true. There are a lot of ways people aren't honest that don't include outright lying. Letting someone believe in something you know isn't true or won't happen. That one sound familiar? Maybe having a conversation with someone about a promotion and you know they aren't ready for it and weren't chosen, but instead of saying that, you say something like, "Oh, we're still discussing it. I'll let you know when a decision's been made." Or I really wanted to promote you, but finance just wouldn't give me the budget. And then a few months later, you hire someone else to do that exact same job. Do yourself and your team a favor. Stop shying away from difficult conversations or withholding information that would make someone else's job or life easier, and just be honest. Be honest with them and be honest with yourself, especially about your motives. If you're intentionally withholding information that could look like having meetings without them, that they should be a key contributor or a decision maker in, it doesn't always look like keeping secrets. Sometimes it's as simple as allowing someone to be excluded from a meeting, pretending a decision hasn't been made yet, or avoiding a topic altogether. If those are behaviors you're engaging in or you're seeing, you've got to stop, first of all. And second, you need to look at the motive behind those actions. I am willing to bet those decisions are rooted in fear. And with a solid foundation of trust, you'll be able to look at those fears, acknowledge them, and then move forward in a healthy way. If you're not sharing certain information with someone, is it because you're scared they might outperform you or that they might hold more influence in the room than you? If you decided someone wasn't ready for a promotion but blamed it on finance or dodged answering, is it because you're not comfortable having the coaching conversation required for them to get to the next level? So many of our avoidant behaviors are rooted in fear. But if you have trust with your team and with yourself, you'll be able to identify that, look at it and be like, that's a little weird, and then move forward in the healthy direction. So take a minute, see if you can find anything you're currently avoiding or maybe not being completely honest about. Some of the nicest people I know aren't honest, and they don't even realize it. Because there's this idea that being dishonest means telling lies about people or inventing stories about why you were late for work, right? But we can engage in dishonest practices just by being avoidant or by not trusting and being honest with ourselves. Dang. That's kind of big, huh? All right, key takeaways. Trust can make or break a high-performing team. You can't have one without the other. So if you want top-notch performance, you have to establish trust, period, non-negotiable. Open communication, creating a safe space to be vulnerable and make mistakes, open accountability, and honesty are key components to establish that trust or start to repair trust in an environment or situation where it's been broken. Trust is such a dynamic thing. It's really more of a verb than a noun if you're doing it right, because it's a give and take, back and forth, that you choose to extend or take back, to protect and build or break, These are not the be-all and end-all ways to establish trust. There are certainly other aspects to it that we'll get into later on, things like boundaries, keeping someone's confidence, being reliable, among others. But if you're looking for a solid foundation and some core tools to add to your tool belt, then the skills we talked about today are going to get you where you need to go. An incredibly smart and fabulous woman said, "Do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better." Every day you decide to face a problem or learn a new skill, you put yourself on the path to do better. And that's a pretty awesome thing. So be proud of yourself. Growing's hard work, so go put a gold star on your sticker chart. You can help your colleagues downline or someone else put a gold star on their sticker chart by sharing a link to today's episode or sending them over to apdynamics.substack.com. This is a new channel, so you sharing and engaging helps us grow and get this content in front of people who might not have the opportunity or, quite frankly, the financial means to attend a live event. Thank you for being here. Thank you for helping others have access to tools to grow and become better leaders. And thank you for choosing to bring your best self to your team. Stay curious, assume positive intent, and enjoy the journey as a learn it all. I'll see you in the next one.